Again today the Gemara on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, 3 lines down from the top of the Amud. Omar Rava, Omar Rav Chase Boi Rabami. Rabami asked the following shaila. This shaila of Rabami refers back to the halacha that it said in the Mishnah regarding Oinah. That the Mishnah says that Avodim, Shtarais, Karkais, Hekdeshais. There's no halacha of Oinah regarding all of these things. What's the halacha of Oinah? Oinah is the halacha that when you overcharge someone or he underpaid in the amount of a shtus, it's a sixth, so then he can ask back for that money that he overpaid, or he can back out from the sale. The person that was frauded can back out of the sale. That's the halacha of Oinah. Then there's another halacha which is called Bitul Mekach. When the fraud was more than a sixth, so then the whole sale is bottled. Either one of them can back out of it. That's what the Gemara Shaila here will pertain to. Let's see. So Shaila was, Rav Chase said that Boy Rav Ami asked, Oinah ein lehem. The Mishnah says that regarding all these cases, there's no din of Oinah. But the question though is, Bitul Mekach yesh lehem? Do I say that nevertheless, in a case when the Oinah was more than a shtus, so over there, the sale will be bottled, because in such a case, when the Oinah was more than a shtus, then the whole thing is considered to be a mekach tos. That whole thing is a mistake. That's not included in the parsha of the drasha of Leisainu. The Gemara before brought Al Tainu actually. Al Tainu Ishus Achiv, that's the source from where you learn out regarding these cases, there's no din of Oinah. But this is, regardless of that pasuk of Oinah, this is mamash a mekach tos. So in such a case, it would apply even to these cases. Or no, even the din of a mekach tos does not apply here either. It is part of the parsha of Oinah. And Rashi explains because there is a case where a person gives a certain measurement, a certain amount, and then you give him less than what you said. You say you're going to give a person a number, 10, and you give him 9 instead, so you gave a specific number and you gave less than that. That's something which is a mekach tos that's not included in the parsha of Oinah. But if it's something which is as far as the value of the object that you're selling, even if the Oinah is more than a shtus where the halacha is bitul mekach, nevertheless, it's still part of the rest of the din of Oinah, and these things that are excluded from din Oinah, it's also excluded in this case. Amar Rav Nachman said, Rav Chase then said, Pashat Rabami. Rabami answered and he resolved this. Oinah ein lehem, the din of Oinah does not apply in all these cases, but bitul mekach yesh lehem. If it's a case where the Oinah is more than a sixth, and then we consider it to be automatically the whole sale is bottled and anyone can back out, that does apply even regarding all these cases. The Gemara brings other Amiroim that spoke about this subject. Rabbi Yaina said, hekdeshes. He spoke about the case of hekdeshes, hektish, that it said in the Mishnah that there is no din of Oinah. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar akarkois. And Rabbi Yirmiyah said regarding the halacha of karkois. What the Gemara is saying is, Rabbi Yaina said regarding hektish, that when it comes to hektish, we say that even though there's no din of Oinah by hektish, but nevertheless, when it's more than a sixth and the whole mekach is bottled, that applies even by hektish. Rabbi Yirmiyah said this regarding karkois. V'tavai mishmed Rabbi Yechanan amru. They both said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that Oinah ein lehem, the din of Oinah does not apply, but bitul mekach yesh lehem. But that the whole entire mekach is bottled in a case where it's more than a sixth, that does apply even by them. So now the Gemara explains, one spoke about, Rabbi Yaina spoke about hektish, and Rabbi Yirmiyah said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan regarding karkois. And so the Gemara says like this, Man da'amai hekdeshais, the one that says that Rabbi Yechanan said this regarding hektish, kol shekein akarkois. Definitely he holds that the same would apply regarding karkois. And the reason is because if you say regarding hekdeshais, that even though there's no din Oinah, but there still is a din of bitul mekach. So what you're saying is that the din of bitul mekach is not included in this pasuk of Al Tainu. It's not part of that parsha of Al Tainu. So therefore, there's no source to be memayit hektish from Oinah in our case where it's a bitul mekach. So if there's no source to be memayit it in such a case, one of bitul mekach, so then the same applies regarding karka. Okay, that's according to Rabbi Yaina, that said this in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Rashi explains that by hekdeshes, the reason why, if it's a bitul mekach, it's more than a sixth, then I say that the whole sale is going to be bottle, even though there's a klal that by hektish, there's no tos, klape shmaya. That's Rashi's lashon. By the Eibishter, there's no such a thing as a tos. But nevertheless, in such a case of bittul mekach, when it's more than a sixth, it's not considered to be a sale b'chlal. There's no sale there at all. So if there's no sale there at all, so then, in such a case, it does not take effect. So for sure, when it comes to karka, when you're selling it to a friend, in such a case where you frauded him more than a sixth, there's no sale b'chlal. The person for sure didn't buy from you this property al das that he's going to pay so much extra, and he realizes that the whole sale is nothing. That's if you say that it was said regarding hektish. But mandalma karkois, the other opinion that says that Rav Yechanan said in the case of karkois, I say that over there when the fraud is more than a sixth, then there's a bittul mekach. He said it only regarding karka. And the reason is, as I explained, regarding karka, we say that there's an assumption that the person you're selling it to does not agree to the sale if the inah is so high, more than a shtos, for sure al dazeh, he did not agree to the sale. But regarding hektish, we're not going to say this. By hektish, we're going to say that the din of oinah, even more than a sixth, is going to be excluded in the pasuk of Altainu, and by hektish, since it's something which is hektish, it's shamayim, it's the Eibishter. There's no inyan of any kind of level of oinah regarding hektish, whether it's a shtos, even more than a shtos. By shamayim, there's no inyan of oinah b'chlal. And the Gemara brings a source for this to make this distinction between karka and hektish. Shmuel, we see Shmuel said a similar thing. Shmuel said hektish shava mana. If you have hektish, that the value of it is a mana. Shechiluloi, and you're redeeming it al shava pruta, in return for something that's only worth one pruta. So obviously there's a big oinah here. You're giving to hektish something that's worth much less. Nevertheless, mechulal, you can redeem it this way, and it'll become redeemed. Because regarding hektish, the whole concept of einah does not apply. The shamayim, hektish, which is shamayim, there's no such a thing as a tos by something of hektish, which is shaykh to shamayim. So Shmuel says that it'll become redeemed. So similar, the Gemara before, according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, is making this distinction that regarding karkois, if the fraud is so high, then there is going to be a Ainah by karkais, but regarding hektish, doesn't matter how high the Ainah is, there's no inyan of Ainah b'negei to hektish. Tanan Hosam, we learned in a Mishnah, Masechta Temurah. Mishnah there says, Im Haya Kodesh, that Mishnah there talks about a carbon. The halach of a carbon is that you can't redeem it from hektish. It's designated for the Mizbeach, it can't be redeemed. However, the Mishnah then says, Im Haya Kodesh Balmum, if this carbon was a Balmum and you're redeeming it, Yatzal Chulin. Then it could be redeemed and it goes out to become Chulin. But then the case over here, that Mishnah is, you gave very little money to redeem this carbon, not the value of this behemoth. So even though it immediately goes out to Chulin, but tzarech las esloi damim. You have to make up though for the money of its value that you didn't pay when you redeemed it. That's the Mishnah. Now on this, there's a machlekes Rabbi Yechanan and Reish Lakish. Why are you obligated to make up, to give the money to the hektish that you didn't give for its value? Rabbi Yechanan says, Yatzal Chulin dvar teire. It already been at teire, it's fully redeemed, and it's chulin, and you don't have to make up anything. The fact that you have to make up and give hektish the difference of the money you didn't give, that's all etakana midrabanan. Reish Lakish Amar, however, Reish Lakish argues and says, that you're obligated minat teire to make up for the amount that you didn't give for the value of this carbon that you redeemed. So here in this machlekes, Rashi brings that the source of the machlekes of Rabbi Yechanan and Reish Lakish is based on the pasuk that it says a few times when you redeem hektish, the pasuk of erkecha, that you should redeem it. The simple touch of erkecha means in its value. So the one that says, it was a Rabbi Yechanan that says that you don't have to make up anything, he learns erkecha means any value. When you redeem hektish, as long as you gave any of its value, it gets redeemed. Reish Lakish says no, erkecha means it's real value. You have to give the real value in order to redeem it. That's the basis, the source of the machlekes, the way Rashi brings it here. Okay, but now the Gemara is going to ask from this of what Rabbi Yechanan said here, based on what Rabbi Yaina said before, according to Rabbi Yechanan. Let's see. First, the Gemara clarifies when we're saying here that the person gave to redeem this carbon less than its value. How much less of its value are we talking about? Are we talking about a sixth, the level of Ainah, or even higher than that, where there's a din of bittul mekach, that the whole sale is bottled. So b'mayas ginon, what are we talking about? If the case over here is that the person redeemed it and the discrepancy of the value and the amount that he gave was only in the amount of a sixth, so is it regarding this case that Ish Lakish is explaining the Mishnah in Tamura that min atayra you're obligated to make up for that difference? How could it be? But Vatnan, the Mishnah we learned before here, and it says Eilu dvarim she'ela meino. By the following, the halacha of eno of a sixth does not apply. Akarkois, ha'avodim, v'ashtodes, and v'hegdeshos. Regarding hektish, one of them, this din of eno by a sixth does not apply, which means that according to even a Shlakish would agree, even though he learns from the pasuk erkacha that you have to give the value of what you're redeeming, but if the difference is only in the amount of a sixth, it's still considered to be erkacha. Over there, you don't have to make it up. It's a clear Mishnah. So how would Rish Lakish argue with this? Elo, says the Gemara, it must be, what is that Mishnah in Tamura talking about? Bittul mekach. It's talking about a case where the Ainah was more than a sixth. Where usually we say in such a case, the whole sale is null and void. And over here is the machlekes of Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish, whether you're obligated to make up the difference min atayra or only min rabbanan. So, but on this, now the Gemara asks, if so, b'hol leimer Rabbi Yechonin, is that in such a case, when the fraud was so high, and it's a case of bittul mekach, there's Rabbi Yechon here saying, tzarech lasis leidomim midivreyim, that you're only obligated to pay the difference to the hektish only midrabanan. But here's the question on what Rabbi Yechon said before, according to Rabbi Yechonin. But for him, Rabbi Yechonin hekdesha, Rabbi Yechon said before, according to Rabbi Yechonin, that when it comes to a no, which is more than a sixth, so regarding hekdeshus, we say that it's bittul mekach. You must make up the difference. And over here, according to this understanding now of this machlokes of Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish in the Mishnah of Tamura, Rabbi Yechon is saying you're only obligated to make up the difference midrabanan. The Gemara quotes the continuation over here of what we quoted before. The question is on Rabbi Yechon, but the Gemara quotes the continuation. Rabbi Yirmiyah says akarkois, that this halacha that if when it's higher than a sixth, it's bittul mekach, so then the whole sale is bottled. That's only regarding karkois. V'tavai mishmei the Rabbi Yechonin, and they both said in the name of Rabbi Yechonin, Omri. They were both speaking in the name of Rabbi Yechonin that I know ein lehem, but bittul mekach yesh lehem. But the halacha of bittul mekach does apply. So that's again the Gemara's question here, the contradiction in the opinion of Rabbi Yechonin. Rabbi Yechonin said in the name of Rabbi Yechonin, when it's more than a sixth, then even by hektish, there's a bittul mekach. And here, in this Mishnah in Tamura, Rabbi Yechonin is explaining that only with the only with the Rabbana, you have to make up for the difference, even though the difference is more than a sixth. So the Gemara answers, La'olam be'bittul mekach. Yeah, like we just said, that machlokes of Rabbi Yechonin and Rish Lakish is talking about a case where it's a bittul mekach, the Ainah was more than a sixth. And ve'epech, the Rabbi Yechonin le Rish Lakish, or the Rish Lakish le Rabbi Yechonin. You have to switch the opinions. Rabbi Yechonin for Rish Lakish and Rish Lakish for Rabbi Yechonin. And Rabbi Yechonin is the one that said that min ha-teira, you have to make up the difference. Like his shitta, that he said before, that you have to make up the difference in a case when it's bittul mekach. And if not, it's not erkacha of what you're supposed to give for hektish. Okay, that's the answer here. So there's no contradiction in Rabbi Yechin's opinion. But now the Gemara explains the basis of this machlokes here between Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish. The Gemara has a few ways how to interpret this machlokes. What's the basis of the machlokes of Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish here? So the first pshat is b'de Shmuel. They're arguing about what we quoted before, what Shmuel said. The Oma Shmuel said, hektish, shaveh moneh. When you have hektish, that's worth a moneh. Shechilaloi al shaveh pruta. And you're redeeming it from hektish and you're paying just a pruta. Mechulal. Shmuel, that is said, that it'll be mechulal. It goes out into chulin, even though you paid so little. Mar islay the Shmuel. So according to the way the Gemara is switched now, what it's saying over here is that Rish Lakish holds like what Shmuel said, that it goes out already into chulin. So if it goes out to chulin, so min ha-teira, you're not chayiv to make up the difference that there is between the price of the behemoth and what you paid. Omar, Leslie the Shmuel. However, according to Rabbi Yechon, he doesn't hold of what Shmuel said, and therefore he says if it's more than a shtos, it's not, you can't redeem this way. It's not derech mekach b'chlal. It's nothing. So what you did here to try to take it out into chulin did not work at all. So therefore you're going to have to make up the difference. According to the pshat that the Gemara is saying now, even though in the lashon of the Mishnah the Gemara quoted before there from Tumura, it says yotza l'chulin and v'tzarech las leidamim. It says that it goes out to chulin right away. You just have to make up the difference. But according to the pshat that the Gemara is saying now, at least according to Rashi, the pshat over there is it's going to go out to chulin only when you're going to make up the difference. Until you don't make up the difference, it can't go out into chulin because he doesn't hold of what Shmuel said, that it goes out to chulin. That's Rashi's pshat. In Taisvis it says that when it said yotza l'chulin, what it meant is that portion of what you did pay for, the amount, the value that you did pay for, that goes out to chulin. If you want the rest to go out into chulin, you have to pay the rest of the value as well. Another pshat the Gemara says, or I can tell you the kula alma islu de Shmuel. Everybody holds of what Shmuel said, that when you pay so little to redeem a behemoth that was worth a money for hektish, it's going to go out into chulin. But here the argument between Rabbi Yechon and Reish Lakish, whether you have to make up the difference in the price, min hatayra or midrabbanan, they're arguing as follows. So one opinion here is, Shmuel said, b'di'evet. If you paid hektish in this way, b'di'evet, so then we say it goes out to chulin. But l'chatchila loy. L'chatchila, because it uses in the Torah the lashon be'erkecha, it means you should pay for the hektish the value that it is, and therefore, if you didn't, even though b'di'evet it goes out into chulin, because the Torah writes ke'erkecha min hat-Torah, you have to make up the difference. That's according to Rabbi Yechanan. Umar Sova, but Reish Lakish holds afila l'chatchila. Shmuel was saying that you can pay for hektish very little to redeem something that has a big value. That's even allowed even l'chatchila. The ke'erkecha and the Torah means any amount you pay, you can redeem it. So therefore, both minat Torah and midrabbanan you l'chatchila allowed to do this. But chachama were masakin that then you should pay the difference. But to redeem it, you're allowed l'chatchila to redeem it this way. Now the Gemara brings a third pshat, and it goes back to the original contradiction that the Gemara asked before in Rabbi Yechanan's opinion. And so here the Gemara says, or if you want, I can answer you and say like this. Really, that Mishnah there, that talks about a person that underpaid when he was redeeming from hektish, it was in the amount of a sixth, the amount of kedei oino. What was the question that we had on that before? If that's the case, how could Reish Lakish say that you have to make up the difference? Again, what was the Gemara's question? If it was b'chdei oino, how could Reish Lakish say in the original version of the Gemara that min hatayre you have to make up the difference? The Mishnah before over here in this Perek says that by hektish, if it's b'chdei oino, there's no din of oino in the amount of a shtos. That was the Gemara's question before. So the Gemara says, no, we go back now to this pshat that it is talking about a sixth, and we don't have to switch the opinions between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan. Reish Lakish is the one that says that you're still going to have to make it up for hektish, and even in Atayra you have to make it up. Well, what do we do with the contradiction from our Mishnah, where it says that in such a case there's no dinay na by hektish? Says the Gemara, ubed Rav Chizda kamiflagi. They're arguing, Rabbi Yechon and Reish Lakish are arguing in a statement that Rav Chizda said. Rav Chizda had a whole different pshat in our Mishnah, as the Gemara brings here now. The Omar, what did Rav Chizda say? When it said in our Mishnah before here, regarding hektish, that there's no din of ina for hektish, what that means is, einan b'toiras ina. That means there is no toira of ina. The usual amounts that applies by ina, by a regular person, does not apply by hektish. And therefore, da afila pachais michdei ina chayzer. When it comes to hektish, even when it's less than a sixth, the redemption, you can still go back in it. It's even in such a case. That's what the Mishnah meant to say when it said einan meinah. The exact opposite of the way we understood till now. We understood till now when the Mishnah says that there's no einah for hektish. What it's saying is a kula, that by hektish, when there's a mistake of a sixth, unlike by a regular person, that there's a din of einah that applies, you can back out or you can ask back for the money, and by hektish that does not apply. Over here the Gemara is saying punkt fakert. By hektish it's more chomer. Even if it's less than a sixth, you can back out. So therefore Reish Lakish is saying over here that if it's a sixth or even less than a sixth, that you redeemed it from the hektish, you're going to have to make up the difference minat Torah. So the Gemara Meisvei. So the Gemara asks on this pshat that now we're saying that there's a chumrah by hektish, even less than a sixth, you can back out from this. So but the question is, from what it says in the Braise, ribis v'oina lehedyet, the halachis of ribis, of not charging interest by a loan, or oina applies by a regular person, Ve'ein ribis v'oina lahektish. There is no halacha of ribis or oina that applies by hektish. So the Gemara is simply asking that we see over here, if you just want to read the simple pshat of what the Brisa says, that there's no din of ribis or oina for hektish. So it sounds like that it's saying a kula, that there's no din of oina for hektish. So how could Rav Chisda say that the pshat is that there's no toiras oina, that even less than a sixth, there will be a din of oina? So the Gemara says, what's the question from this Brisa? Mi alima mi masnisin? The language of this Brisa is any stronger than the language that it said in the Mishnah? The Mishnah also said there's no din oina for hektish. In the Mishnah, when the Mishnah used the expression of there's no oina for hektish, Rav Chisda said what it means is there's no toiras oina, that even less than a six you can back up. We can say over here the same thing regarding this Brisa. Hachanami, over here as well, ribis v'din oina lehedyet. There's the din of ribis and also the din oina, the amount that it's by a sixth you can be chayzer, and less you can't. So that applies by a hedyet. Ve'ein ribis v'din oina lehektish. And there's no din of ribis or the din of oina that applies by a hektish, because by a hektish even less than a sixth you could also back out. That's the pshat on this brisa. But the Gemara asks on this, what does it say in the continuation of the brisa? Ihachi haine diktani seife. The brisa continues and says, Ze choyme behedyet me behektish. Here we see something that's more stringent by hedyet more than hektish. Says the Gemara, what do you mean it's more stringent? Regarding ribis, it comes out to be more stringent. But regarding oina, according to what we just said, it's more stringent by hektish. Because by hektish, even less than a sixth, you can back out. By hektish, by hedyet that is, only a sixth you could. So why are we saying this is a stringency in hedyet over the hektish? Says the Gemara, aribis. This stringency that it says here in the Brisa is referring only to ribis. So if so, the question is, Lisni nami ze choyme behektish me behedyet aina. The Brisa should say that the reverse is also true. That right over here, you see that there's a stringency in hektish over hedyet regarding the halacha of aina. That by hedyet the aina is by a sixth, and by hektish the aina is even less than a sixth. According to the pshat that we're saying here, why doesn't the Brisa say that the stringency goes both ways? Answers the Gemara, Hachi Hashta, how could you compare? The Brisa can't use such a lashon, because Bishleime, it would be understood when the Brisa says, or the Brisa actually does say, Zeh choyme behedyet me behektish, that this is a detail where a hedyet is more stringent than hektish, because V'sulai, and there's nothing else that we find that hedyet is more stringent than hektish, only regarding this halacha of ribis, that makes sense. Because this is actually one only case where we find a stringency regarding hedyet more than hektish. Ella, however, for the Brisa to point out the reverse, that hektish, that over here, regarding the din of eina, there's a stringency that hektish has over hedyet, the Brisa can't point out that this is a one detail, one stringency that hektish has over hedyet. Because v'sulai, there's no other stringency that there is of hektish over hedyet. There's a lot of halachas that we say that stringency is regarding hektish over hedyet. So therefore the Brisa does not say the reverse to point out the stringency regarding oina, which would make it sound like that this is the only stringency that hektish has more than hedyet. That can't be true. So therefore it's not a question from this lashon of the Brisa. Because the Gemara brought up here this Brisa, so it will explain the pshat regarding ribis. The Brisa said that there's a halacha of ribis by a hedyet, but there's no halacha of ribis regarding a hektish. The obvious question over here is, ribis, the hektish, heichidami. Where is there a case that ribis would even be possible to apply by hektish, that we're saying that there's no din of ribis by hektish? What's the case of borrowing money from a hektish? So the Gemara says, heichidami, what's the case? If you would want to say as follows, the oisvei gizbar Meya b'mei v'esrim. The Gabay of hektish has money of hektish on him, and he's lending you the money of hektish, that you should pay back hektish ribis. He lends you $100, and you should pay back hektish 120. That's the ribis that you're borrowing from hektish, and in such a case, the halachas of ribis does not apply. Says the Gemara, that can't be the case, because if so, v'haloi ma'ala gizbar. The halacha is, as soon as the gizbar takes out this money from his pocket and he lends it to you, he's not allowed to lend you money from hektish. It's not his to lend to you. When he does that, and this is being done b'sheigig here. That's the case here. Because it's being done b'sheigig, so what happens is, the moment you moil in hektish, the halacha is that money, or that whatever object it may be from hektish that you moil in, immediately it becomes chulin, the moment you moil. And then, the one that was moiled, and he used it, and he took it out into chulin, you're obligated now to pay back hektish, or keren, the principle of what you took out, and including also, you have to add a fifth. So the question over here of the Gemara is, if it's the gabbai of hektish that lent you this money, b'sheigig, didn't realize it's hektish money and he lent it to you, so have mal gizbar. The gizbar right away is moil in what he did here. V'kivin shemal gizbar. The halacha is, when you're moil in the money of hektish b'sheigig, yatsu ma'isav l'chulin, so that money becomes chulin right away. V'havalahu the hedyet. If so, this money that the gabbai of hektish is lending you is actually now chulin money. And there should be a halacha of ribis that should apply over here. He's obligated to pay back hektish, a keren, and a chaimish, but this actual money now becomes chulin money. So in such a case, there's no din of borrowing from hektish. It's not hektish money anymore. Tosfos over here points out that this halacha, that once you moil in hektish, it becomes chulin, is when you borrow it b'sheigig. When you moil b'sheigig from hektish. When you moil b'mezid from hektish, then there's no such a halacha that it becomes chulin right away. Nevertheless, the Gemara here does not say that the case is that you're borrowing b'mezid from hektish when this person, the gabbai b'mezid, is lending you the money from hektish, because in such a case it's not shaykh to say that there's no din of ribis. The person that borrowed this money is not allowed to use it at all. It's still hektish money. It's not a loan that's allowed. So the Gemara is looking for a case where there's a loan that you're borrowing from hektish, and you're allowed to use the money from hektish, and when you pay back ribis, the halacha of ribis would not apply. What is that case? Rav Ashi explains, the case over here is the following case. And here the Gemara brings an example of ribis, which is only a ribis midrabanan. The case over here is shekibel olav lesapek saltais me'arba. When a person is getting paid from hektish, and he's accepting upon himself that he's going to provide for hektish a certain measure. She says, let's say he's getting a sela, and he's going to give a certain measure, a saw. He's going to give 4 saw of flour for the hektish for this sela of money that he got. And now the price went up, and now you could only get 3 saw for this. What's the Gemara talking about here? The Gemara is talking about a case, as we'll see, the Gemara brings the Bryce afterwards here about this, that there's a halacha of ribis that applies over here. If you're in the beginning of a season and the price of the flour was not set yet, so what do? You want to chaparain and pay someone in advance, and you tell him, you know what, the price in the market was not set yet, I'm paying you right now money in advance, so you have the money already. And now give me for a cheaper price this flour, and if it turns out later in the season that the price is actually higher, it doesn't matter. You're going to give me according to the price I gave to you now. Midrabanan, that's a din of ribis, because you're allowing this person to keep this money in advance. In return, he's going to give you back now extra flour, in other words, a cheaper price, not according to the real market value that's going to be later, because you gave him the money before the price of the market was set, and you did it to chaparain, to give him the money in advance in order to get from him cheaper. That midrabanan is a din of ribis. And that's what the Gemara is saying over here, that it's the same thing also when hektish pays a person to provide the flour that's needed for the karbanis and the Beis Hamikdash. So you're not allowed to, usually you wouldn't be allowed to provide in advance the money, and then you'll get the flour at a cheaper price. But over here, by hektish though, in this case, let's see the words of the Gemara inside, all of the sapik saltais me'arba, he accepted upon himself. In other words, he's getting paid from hektish in advance before the market price was set, and he's going to provide for hektish for saw of flour, and now the price goes up, and it's only really 3 that is the value of this money, but he's still going to provide more. So by hektish, this is allowed, even though by a hedyet, this is ribis midrabanan. And the Gemara brings the source of this, Kedetanya, or Kedetnan. This is a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that hamakabel all of the sapik saltes me'arba, person that accepts upon himself, he gives the money, he's paid, that is. He's paid from hektish in advance the money, and he accepts upon himself to give hektish in return 4 sa'ah flour, now v'amdu mishalosh, and later when the market price is set, he sees that it's only 3, misapik ma'arba. He has to give more that for the cheaper price that he made up already with hektish in advance. Mishalosh, if he made up with hektish a more expensive price of 3, v'amdu me'arba, and then the later, when he's actually providing it, the market value went down, and now you can get 4 sa'ah for this amount, misapik ma'arba. You have to give 4. Shiyat hektish alol yaina. When it comes to a difference in the price of the flour, the hektish always has the upper hand. If the price goes up or the price goes down, you always have to provide the higher amount of the flour to the hektish. So you see here in this brayse or this mishnah, this halacha, that even though by a hedit in such a case there's a din of ribis midrabanan, but over here regarding by a hedit there's a din of ribis, but by a hektish there's no din of ribis. That's one pshat. Another pshat the Gemara says, Rav Papa says, what's the case of ribis by hektish? So again, the Gemara's question was that if it's something which is already hektish and you're borrowing it from hektish, so it goes out to chulin. The moment you moil in it, it goes out to chulin. So it's not hektish anymore. Says the Gemara, the case over here is hacha ba'avnei binyan hamasures legizbar askinan. We're talking over here about the stones that the gabbai of hektish has to build things in hektish. And what's the halacha with these stones that you're using to build from hektish? The halacha with this is when you buy the stones to use to build in hektish, or someone donates stones to hektish to build. So Shmuel says about this, the Amar Shmuel, Bainin b'chayil v'achakach makdishin, that the stones that are used for this purpose, you leave it to be chulin. After it's built into whichever place it is in the Beis HaMikdash, then you designate it as hektish. And the reason is because if it becomes hektish, as soon as hektish pays for it, then the people that are working with these stones and are building might end up using it, having hanoah from it, if you're just sitting down on a stone for a second, and it's already hektish, and you're going to be moil from hektish. So therefore, they were misaken that you shouldn't designate it to be hektish until it's actually built in already. So therefore, over here, the case over here is that the gabbai had these stones from hektish. It was paid for already by hektish, but it doesn't have the kedusha of hektish on it yet, and that's what he lent out to you with ribis, to pay back to the hektish for ribis. So because, even though it's not really hektish yet, technically, but because when you're paying back, he's lending it out to pay back to hektish ribis, this is the case where we say that the din of ribis does not apply for hektish. Now we go back to the Mishnah before in Daf Nun Vav, where we brought a list of things where the halachas of Oinah does not apply. There was the Avodim, Shtodes, Karkais, Hakdeshais. And then the Mishnah, they said regarding these things as well, that there's no halacha of paying kefil by a ganef or by a shomer that denied he has object in his possession, then he admits, so usually you pay kefil. So the halachas of kefil do not apply. Ein behem tashlumi kefil. What's the source for this? The Tanur Rabbanon. Because we learned in the Braise, it brings from the pasuk that it says, by this case of a person that has to pay kefil, it says, I'll call dvar pesha. Anything that you were negligent, meaning the person that's claiming that it's his, klal. So here, the pasuk uses a term of all-inclusive. Al shor, al chomer, al seh, al salmo. Then it gives specific examples. That's a prat. And then it says again, al kol aveda, anything that you'll lose. Asher yoymar, the person will say, so what do we see here? Chas of a kolal. This is another klal. So this is a klal, uprat, the klal. The Torah starts off with a klal, then it specifies a prat, then it says a klal again. How do we dash on this when the Torah does this? What we say here is the klal that the Torah speaks about has to be similar in nature to the prat that was mentioned in the middle. And therefore here we say, the details that the Torah spells out are movable items, and they themselves have a value of money. So too, the halacha of paying kefil only applies to something which is a movable item, and it itself has a value of money. Therefore, yatsu karkois she'ena metaltalin, this excludes properties that they are not movable. Yatsu avadim shokshel karkois, and it also excludes the slaves of Evet Kanani that's compared to karka. And yatsu shtarais, and it also excludes documents that have a loan inside of it that you sell to someone to be able to collect this loan. Shava bisha metaltalin, even though it is a movable item, but ein gufa mammon. The value is not in the actual paper itself. You're selling the loan that's in it that you can collect. And so to Ekdeshais, we exclude hektish from the payment of kefil, because Amakra, the Torah says by the payment of kefil, re'ehu, that your friend gave it to you. Re'ehu v'loy hektish, gave it to you by the shomer, or if you stole it from your friend. So this the payment of kefil applies there, and not by hektish. Then the Mishnah said, v'loy tashlum and dal v'hei. If it's an animal that you stole and you slaughtered it or you sold it, then there usually there's halacha, you have to pay 4 or 5 times as much, depends if it was an ox or a sheep, but this does not apply by hektish. My time, what's the reason for this? So the Gemara explains, we just excluded that there's no din of kefil. If so, there's no din of dalat vehei either, because tashlume dalat vehei amar achmana. The Torah says when you pay 4 or 5 times as much. V'loi tashlume shloisha v'arba, but you don't pay 3 or 4 times as much. When you pay dalat vehei, the payment of kefil is part of the payment of dalat vehei. You pay kefil, then you add, if it's dalat vehei, you're going to add 3 or 4 times as much. But over here, if you don't pay the kefil, that would mean that you would pay 3 or 4 times as much? No, that does not apply. The Torah says you pay 4 or 5 times as much, which only applies if you pay kefil. But if there's no din of kefil, there's no din of dalat vehei. The next thing is said in the Mishnah, Shoy Mechinam Ein Nishpa. The halacha of a Shoy Mechinam that swears that he was not negligent, to pater himself on an object that he had in his possession, does not apply to these cases either. You know, and immediately what's the source for this? The Tana Rabbanan and Abraisa, it says, regarding a Shoy Mechinam, the pasuk says, Ki yita nishal re'eyu. If you gave an object to your friend, klal, that's again, here we have this drasha of a klal, a prat, a klal. So this is a klal, where the Torah says an all-inclusive term. Then it says kesef kelim, it was money or vessels, that's a prat. And then it says v'gunav mi beisa ish, or the other gersa here that's brought that says in other places, that says in the pasuk lishmar, to guard it. And that's chazav a kalal, another klal again. So klal, a prat, a klal, yatadon elakein a prat. The klal that it says in the Torah has to be similar in nature to the things that the Torah specifies. Just like the prat that's mentioned here is a movable item and its value is in itself. I've called as we explained before already, Yotza Karkoish, metaltalin, excluding properties that are not metaltalin, and Yotza Avodim, Shokshula Karkois, also excluding Avodim that are compared to Karka, and Yotza Shtaris, Shav Bisham metaltalin, Ein Gufam Mamin, Shtaris, the value is not in them themselves. And Hekdeishais, where do we exclude Hektish of this halacha of a Shemer? Omakra, the Torah says, Re'ehu v'loishal Hektish. The halachas of a Shemer that would have to make a Shvuah only applies between you and your friend, but not by Hektish. And the Mishnah said, a similar halacha, Noisa Sachar Ein Mishalem, a Shemer Sachar is being paid for being a Shemer. He does not have to pay for Geneva v'Aveda the way it is usually by a Shemer. So here the Gemara brings a similar drasha from a pasuk that it says by the Shemer Sachar. Where do we see this? Manan immediately the Tana Rabbanan on the pasuk says, "Ki yit inishal re'eyu." Person gives to his friend something to keep for him, and he's going to be paid for this. That's a klal. Then it says chamoy. The said the Torah specifies these details. It's a prat. Then it says again, "V'chol behema lishmor chazav v'kalal." The Torah says again a klal. Klal, a prat, a klal. Iyatadon elaken a prat. Ma prat mefurish davar metaltal v'gufim mamen. I've called davar metaltal v'gufim mamen. Yotze karkoy she'enem metaltalin. Yotze avodim shehukshula karkoy, as we explained before. And yotze shtaris shav bisham metaltalin en gufim mamen. And negdeishos is also excluded because Omakra the Torah says re'ehu v'loi re'ehu v'loi shel hektish. That by hektish the halachas of the payment of a shemer sachar does not apply.